here we go, folks.
Hello, good evening and afternoon if you're in the United States, evening if you're in the UK. Welcome to Paranormal Versus with myself, Kell Ridley, and my co-host, Michael Koff. Today we've got a really interesting guest on the show, and it's a friend of Michael's, so I'm going to let Michael introduce our guest tonight. So, Michael?
So our guest tonight, I had the privilege and blessing to meet in Egypt in 2014 on a tour with a friend of mine, and she has become a great friend, and we talk a lot, and we're learning. We've had similar experiences, and it's so nice to have someone to talk to about that. So I will save that for the show, and so it's my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce Kathy Tierney Cogliano to the show.
Thank you, my dear friend. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you both. Thanks for having me.
It's amazing to have you on the show, so thank you for coming on.
Aw, thank you.
Welcome, Georgia. We're into the paranormal too, so you're in the right spot. So you sent us a really cool bio that's full of a lot of really cool stuff that I'm hoping we can touch on all of it, but we'll just see where it goes. But for those who haven't had the opportunity to meet you or hear you or see your writings, can you give a short little background of who you are and what you do?
For me, I think like a lot of us, and we were kind of chatting about this prior to the show, is, it started for me as a kid. So I was, about 6 years old when my paranormal experience happened. And we had gone to visit my grandfather in the hospital. And back in the day, you couldn't go in as a child to go visit in the hospital. So we stayed outside. We kind of found a little hill. My grandfather came to the window. We waved to him from the window and he waved back. And that was the last time I saw him. So we went home. I went to bed. The middle of the night, I don't know to this day what happened. Something woke me up and I sat upright in bed. I shared the room with my sister, Karen. She's sound asleep. I looked over and then I looked into the corner of the room and we had kind of a small TV on a TV stand. And in filling the entire TV screen was my grandfather, very animated, talking to me. And I, as a kid, I was like, oh my God. And I dove under the covers. I was like, oh my God. So I must have fallen asleep, only to have my dad the next morning call the three of us kids downstairs to tell us that my grandfather had passed away. So that day we saw him was the last day I saw him alive, only he did come to visit me. I believe he visited me prior to his passing. I think he was in transition. Now, I know that this many years later, but I find it remarkable that he was able to work with that technology, I guess you'd say, of using the TV as a medium to communicate to me. I find remarkable. Other people I've told the story to, they find that remarkable as well. I'll never forget it. The interesting part of that story is we had a service later that week. Again, as a kid, it was the first time the three of us had ever been to a wake. And as I walked into the funeral home, I see across the room my grandfather laid out in a suit in the casket. Well, I start screaming. We called him Grampy. Grampy's not dead. I just saw him. I just talked to him. He's not dead. They had to literally bring me out of the funeral home and bring me back to my grandparents' home because I would not accept that my grandfather was dead, that I felt he was alive because he had come to me, he had communicated to me. And we are very close, my grandfather and I, and he still comes to me. I can see spirit and communicate to spirit. And so when he comes, though, it's interesting. He presents with the smell of his sweet tobacco, because he used to hand roll his own cigarettes. So he had the tobacco stained fingers. So usually if somebody will read me, a lot of times he'll pop in and they'll be like, oh, I smell this sweet tobacco. And I know, and sure enough, he'll come through and he'll have a good message usually. So that kind of was the kickoff for me, was having that incredible experience. But what's interesting, I never shared that experience with my parents. I never shared, the full experience of seeing him in the TV. I don't know why, even that young, I felt the sense of, you may not want to kind of talk about that one. And the same thing, again, as a kid, my father was in the Marine Corps, so he was a career Marine. His last station, we were all, went to live on base in Connecticut, New London Nuclear Sub Base. And so we're living, on the base, going to school there on the base. I was in 4th grade at the time. And so what is that, about 9? So I'm walking to school alone, which is odd. When I look back and tell this story, I think to myself, that's strange. Why wasn't I with my siblings or friends? But I'm walking to school alone. And I could see the school off in the distance, and we're on the base, we're on the military base. And I look up, all of a sudden appears in front of me this huge, massive cigar-shaped craft.
Wow.
And it just hovered right in front of me. It was probably just hundreds of feet in front of me, because it literally was between me and the school, and I was not that far from the school. And it just hovered there. And I can remember thinking, okay, there's no sound. I can remember noticing the sunlight glinting off the brightness of the silver of the craft. But then on the ends, it appeared to have these darker ends. But again, no sound. It hovered there for a good little bit. And then all of a sudden, I can remember, so this is where it gets dicey. I can remember feeling like I'm going to be late for school. And I started to run to school. And I was, in fact, late for school. Now, I have no idea, now that I know what I know, and now that I have so many different friends who have had abduction experiences, who have been on craft, and I think to myself, I wonder what happened to me that day. I wasn't late enough that they called my parents, but I was definitely late. And I mean, okay, how can I be late if I was within vision of the school? I was in feet of the school, but yet here's this craft between me and my school, and I'm late. So I often wonder about that. But anyway, so there's the craft thing, and I have craft that come where I live right now, on very sacred Wampanoag land. I don't know if there's a connection with that, but the craft are always above my house. I have seen motherships. I go out there and I'll lay out in my courtyard, and the things I see are absolutely remarkable. So I do have this connection with our extraterrestrial beings, let's say. Wow. It continues to this day.
That's pretty amazing. I've got a question about that, actually. A lot of UFO sightings seem to be around nuclear air bases.
Yes.
Do you think it's like a warning to mankind not to play with nuclear technology?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, Cal. I did an article for Outer Limits magazine on Paul Hellyer. He was the Minister of Defense for Canada. He died, I want to say it was just last year, a couple years ago now. I had the great honor to do an article about him. The biggest takeaway for me in this remarkable man was that here he was in a government position, defense, and he fully believed. He himself had seen craft. What came across his desk, at the time he couldn't talk about most of it, but a lot of it came out after the fact, that he, numerous sightings of crafts that, I mean, happens. I mean, it's, and I also have a sense that there are some of us, I'm not quite sure why, maybe somebody out in the audience can weigh in, is that we're kind of programmed to have these interactions with these craft. I've also had an interaction with an alien being, so I think, so I always go back as a lover of history to Eisenhower, to the theory out there that he had a contract with the government, that certain people were the government was going to allow them to be taken. I'm not saying I was one of them, but I often look back to that part of our history and I think to myself, okay, there's a lot of people out there who have been abducted, who have incredible stories to tell. Can we bring it all the way back to then that we made this agreement? Because if you think about it, there's not a lot of history prior to that point of our history of people having these, feelings of being abducted, or you just don't see a lot of reports about that. But something's going on. Yeah.
Do you think? Sorry, Michael. Go on.
I would say it's interesting you bring that up, Eisenhower, because I know his granddaughter, Laura, and she talks about it, and she says what we call the shadow government or cabal came in and told him as the president, this is what we're doing with these beings. And that's why he came out with that speech about the military industrial complexes, because they were running the show. He had no say on what was happening. But she said, yeah, they told them they are going to be abducting people, and there's nothing he can do about it because he's only the president. And it's like, that's kind of a scary thought to hear. You're supposed to be the leader of the free country, and they're telling you you're powerless.
Yeah. No, Paul Hellyer spoke about that as well, that he was a firm believer in there being a cabal, that there being this sense of I guess I'd use the word evil, trying to take over. But Cal, to your point earlier, that he also, made the point that was their big message. In fact, he wrote probably 7 books, if I'm not mistaken. His biggest thing that he wanted to get out there was for us to understand that these alien beings, who there are numerous different civilizations of them out there, that's their biggest worry, is that mankind will be stupid enough to actually use the nuclear technology to eliminate the planet or the ripple effect that has in the universe. That's their concern, that it's not only would we implode ourselves, but all these other civilizations gone. So and we all know the stories, how they have interacted with some of our nuclear, all over the world, nuclear armaments. So I'm a big believer that they're out there to help us. Although I must also acknowledge and say that, I do know there are people, some are friends, who have had horrific abduction stories to tell. Wow. So my experience was nothing compared to some of what they've gone through. So I feel a bit blessed that my interaction was not as horrific as theirs.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you think that the abductions are random, or are they taking specific people?
I just have a sense. I don't think it's random. So how that works out, Cal, I'm not sure, but I do believe, so here's the other interesting connection. Now that I'm out there kind of talking about all of this, which for many years I never would, even when I had that experience seeing the craft. My father's in the military. That's another connection. There's the nuclear. A lot of us who have had experiences, we have a parent that was in the service. So here I am living on a damn base, and I'm having that experience of seeing that incredible craft. And that, that again is, they're all interconnected. So I think that people, I can just speak for myself that, I started off with the paranormal opening up for me. Then I end up having these, unusual experiences, seeing craft, having interactions on that level. And I do think that there are some people, for whatever reason, I think are predestined to, I guess, be part of this whole phenomena.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting you point out that your dad was military, and this is probably going to lead into a story. But when we met in Egypt and talking about, my experiences and everything, my father was in the Navy, in the military. And so there's another common to where,
Yep.
it very well could be that they watch the military families.
I wouldn't doubt it, Michael. If nothing else, this journey of mine has led me to have such an open mind to all of it, and to appreciate each and every one of our experiences. I mean, who are we to judge anybody, their experience? And that's where I have some dear friends who are just the most incredible academics. But I have to say that, they want to have proof. You got to have the proof. You got to have the photograph. You got to have, an eyewitness. You have to. And most of us who have had our experiences, there's never always have a camera, always have somebody standing next to you. So that's where I think I want to have my voice be heard, is that you can't always have evidence. Things will happen to you because they're going to happen. And so maybe your job is, like Michael, like you, Kell, we talk about it. Yeah. We share the experience, take away the negativity of it if you can, and speak of it, have it be your truth. And so that's kind of, you talk about my journey. That's kind of where it's brought me, is that I've been blessed to kind of have these amazing people come on my path, Michael, and be able to have a platform. Michael, look at you. You've got a platform. We're talking about this. It does not get by me that I think this is all part of our interconnectedness, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was grateful when Kell asked me to co-host this. I was like, sweet.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. You got a platform, and we all have to use our platforms. Yeah.
Yep, definitely. So going back to your grandfather, sorry for skipping backwards, but what did he actually look like? Did he look like he was like a character from a TV show, or?
It was as though he was on the TV. It was as though he was alive. He didn't look sickly to me. He looked like my grandfather, but very animated. So to this day, I'd love to know what he was trying to say to me, because I didn't hear him. So it's funny now, because that's one of the clairs I now do have, is that I can hear things in the spirit realm. Yeah. And I couldn't when I was a kid, because I often think to myself, what was he saying to me? My sense as an intuitive is I think he was so excited that I think part of him knew he was transitioning, and that part of where he was going was mind-blowing. And that I think he had enough awareness to know that he was animated to tell me. So that also tells me, Kell, that maybe he knew something I didn't know at the time, is that I'm going to be opening up, having these experiences, being able to see, coin the phrase, dead people, and all that. Yeah, so he might have, I'd like to think that probably was what got him excited.
Yeah. That's so amazing.
Mm-hmm. And so you also said as a child you had out-of-body experiences. So what was that like for you?
I got to tell you, that's freaky. So first one that happened, I was young. Oh, I'm probably guessing maybe 4, maybe 5. We were, probably more towards 5. We were living in Brockton at the time. We had a swing set right next to the house in the yard. And I was, again, I have all these experiences and I'm by myself. So there's something to that, I'm guessing. I'm by myself in the swing set, and I'm laying on my stomach across the swing. You know how you do, and you just kind of go back and forth. And all of a sudden, I'm like above myself looking down, and I see myself swinging. But yet the thought in my head was, wow, I've got a really good, healthy body in this lifetime. Okay, so what 5-year-old has that thought?
Wow.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then all of a sudden I no sooner kind of look at myself, have the thought, I'm back in my body. And it's kind of like, okay, all right. Again, never spoke of it ever. The second experience happened, I was older. I was probably like 10 or 11. And I got the okay from my parents to walk up to this corner general store. It's probably like a mile away from the house, with an older neighbor friend and Maureen. And both of us are walking. And it's so strange. And I can just picture it clear as day. As we were crossing the walkway, we were crossing the entranceway to our elementary school. And I can remember I stepped off the walkway to start walking across the roadway. And again, it's like I flipped out of my body. I'm up above looking down. I'm watching myself talk to Maureen. I'm watching myself stop. I watch myself take the step, walk across the road, and step up back onto the walkway. And then all of a sudden, again, I'm like whooshed back into my body. And I thought, okay, to the point that I stumbled, and Maureen kind of caught me. She goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, yeah. Again, I had no idea what happened to me until later. It's like you kind of recall it and you're like, okay, wow, that was weird. Again, never talked about it. So, it's a funny thing. I don't know why I never brought it up to anybody. It's like you just kind of intuitively know, yeah, you may not want to share that stuff. At least then. Now I can.
Yeah, and you want to know something really, really freaky? My parents, before I was born in the early 70s, for 6 months, lived in a haunted house in Brockton.
Michael,
So that's why when you said Brockton, I was like, oh my God.
I know. And it's funny because I, wasn't born there, but that's where I ended up having, once my dad got out of the Marines, we settled in Brockton. They built a house. And so my formative kind of grown up years, school years, were in Brockton, graduated from Brockton High. And yeah, oh, that's funny.
And then we didn't find out till we were in Texas that Brockton is a stone's throw from Lilydale.
Yeah, not so much a stone, but New York.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh, so okay, here you go. Here's a creepier little thing. I was born upstate New York in Lockport, New York, which was near the Erie Canal, way up near Buffalo. Yeah. Oh, Lilydale's on my list. One of these days, I would love to get to Lilydale. Have you been?
I have not yet.
Okay. Yeah. One day, I'll get there.
Man, I'm now wondering throughout this show how many more coincidental things that
There'll be more, Michael. There'll be more.
Yeah. Can I just ask you, what techniques do you use to do the astral travel?
Oh, so that happened without me having any preparation for that. Right. And that's almost like, Cal, at the end of my story of being, or my experience of being in the Great Pyramid, because once I got home from having that ridiculous experience, in particular in the Great Pyramid, was when I had the astral travel experience. And without giving too much of that bigger story away, I'm in bed and it's at night. It's probably about 2 or 3 weeks after I get back from Egypt. And these two beings, I called them angels. It's almost like they were like these beautiful angelic light beings come into my room. And literally, and it's funny because I've spoke about this, I've written about this. To this day, I've had people I tell the story to, they say, oh, that was an experience. That actually happened to you. But then there's a little part of me that go, okay, was I dreaming this? But I have to tell you, the more I speak of this experience, I don't think so. It was so real. So they come into the bedroom and one gets me under one arm, one gets me out of the other arm. and out of the bed I go. And then
Wow.
up we go through the house. We're up into the universe, into the blackness of the universe that was stunning beyond anyone's wildest dream. And I could feel the coldness, and I'm only in a nightgown. And I can remember thinking, oh my God, I'm like in a nightgown. What are we doing? And we were traveling so fast. And I know it sounds fantastical, but honest to God, I really do believe it happened. And where do we end up, Michael? They bring me to the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
And I look down. I'm going, oh my God, this is the Great Pyramid. And we go into the Great Pyramid through a hole that's up at the top on one side. And in we go. And I'm brought in, and I'm made to stand behind the sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid. And I probably won't say any more, because maybe we'll go around about and come back to that. But yeah, so that was the astral travel piece. So Michael and Kell, I think I mentioned it to you, Michael, when we chatted first, is that when I went to Egypt, I saw a medium 2 weeks before I left for Egypt. And all of my guides came to her. And this medium, was always used to just dealing with the level of spirit, that our loved ones in spirit come through. Those are the type of energies she's used to dealing with. So when my whole gang showed up as my guides came through, she was kind of thrown. She had never experienced that level of interconnectedness. And they were extremely specific to her that the message she has to give me is that 3 things are going to happen to me on this trip to Egypt: soul retrieval, astral projection, and an alien encounter. So she no sooner gets those words out, she's looking at me like, what the heck is all this? And I looked at her, I was like, I have no idea. Yeah, I'm going to Egypt, but how does any of this work? Seriously. And so we both just kind of let it go. And so I kind of, not all the way, but kind of, it wasn't in the forefront of my mind when I was traveling through Egypt until I got to the Queen's Chamber. And then it was like, holy crap. So yeah, it all happened. All 3 things happened. So that's why, Cal, when you ask about the astral travel piece of that, I think to myself, okay, it probably wasn't a dream because they foresaw it. They told me about that before I left. And very skeptical, thinking, how's that going to happen? But then as I tell you that story, I mean, that's why I think it happened, is that they saw it happening to me. They put it up front that, yep, so astral travel.
Wow.
So yeah, it was an incredible journey to Egypt.
So
And to think I had to travel that far to meet Michael.
Yeah, and we actually got a question in the chat group for you.
Oh, sure.
Matt Atkinson wants to know, what is soul retrieval?
Matt, how that played out for me and how I understand it is that, and it happened in Egypt. It's now since happened to a lot of major sacred places I've now since traveled, guided travel, soul journey. Is that it's for me, it's like learning of another lifetime, so in Egypt, I've had other lifetimes there. So hence the soul retrieval. So it's almost like a part of my soul was left in Egypt, if that makes sense. And that I reconnected with who I was at a soul level there. And I had a couple of incredible experiences where I believe I did go back into that past life or experience what even could be considered a time slip. It's all up for debate. I mean, it was an incredible experience, but again, it speaks to what these guides told me before I left, that there will be soul retrieval. So I believe it was me reconnecting to who I was at a soul level in Egypt. And I believe that because I've had that happen at other sacred places that I've traveled, and I've been blessed to do it all over the world. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how it is for me anyway.
It does actually, because soul retrieval is if you study the metaphysics, it's you believe in the past lives, and it's like you could say, well, I'm looking through a book and about, say, for us, Egypt, we feel called to go. We felt called to go. We went. That is a piece of the soul that's calling out and saying, hey, it's time for me to come home. We go, we have experiences, and it reconnects with us. And it's interesting because you and I were talking about this before Kell came backstage about soul retrieval. Is it changes you. It's like when you go somewhere you feel called to go to, you complete the journey there, you feel different leaving. And I think it's because that piece is integrated back in and has shared everything it's learned. And so it's like now you have this new knowledge, and you've got a new personality almost somewhat, because you got a new piece of you back.
Perfectly said. That's exactly what happened. And then I'll take it a step further. I believe on a soul level that all of our past lives are integrated into our soul. And there are some key past lives that we will incarnate with over and over again, into bringing with us in that incarnation past talents, past just sometimes there are wounds that will come with us. Sometimes we travel as soul family. So for me, it's all that, and that there comes to you a remembrance of like when I first got out of the car and I turned and I could see from the Mena house, Michael, the pyramids. They're like right there in the Giza Plateau.
I know.
I was like, holy cow. Oh my God, that hit me like I can't tell you. And the first thing I felt like, I'm home. That was the first thing that thought that came into my head is I'm home. And so you're right, Michael, you're spot on with that. That's exactly what I think happens, is that there is that soul recognition of part of who you were. You're home.
And when you've talked about the Mena house, I remember looking up and seeing the pyramids, and it's like it finally hit me. Oh my God, I am in Egypt. I am actually physically here in Egypt.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, it was crazy. So the first day we were there, I don't know how it was. It was just me, William, Claire, and I think Carol. We took a ride. They wanted to go see, this was before the group, I think, fully all got together. We went in a little van that was connected to the Mena house. We went up to the Coptic church in Egypt. That was crazy. And that's the one that had since been bombed. There was someone there that, walked in with that was just 3-4 years ago. But anyway, so we go up. But the thing that shocked me was, as we were rounding up to go up onto almost like a highway part, from the main road, we were going up on an overpass. And as you look down, there was a pile of garbage that I've never seen the likes of. It was almost as tall as the overpass. And there were women and children and horses and dogs all feeding off of that pile of trash, garbage, food scraps. I mean, it was huge. And I can remember sitting there, and I can remember just crying. And I can remember William looked over to me, he goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, my first thought was, how can my people have this? How can they live like this? This is not right. So it's almost like, again, the past life thing. It's like, how is this happening? It struck me so as such an abomination that in this day and age that there are people who are out there, women, children, animals, eating out of a pile of garbage. But It's interesting. That is one of the takeaways for me with Egypt, is that it's parts of it are very modern. Other parts, you step back in time 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years, and it hasn't changed at all. You go down some of the tributaries of the Nile, and you see people living in mud huts. I saw a little boy coming out of a mud hut, and he's gathering drinking water out of this tributary in a bucket, and what's floating by but the carcass of a horse. So it's like, but it was like you step back in time. I mean, there are still some people that are living that way.
Wow.
And not just Egypt. I'm sure it happens all over the world. But you really feel that when you're there. You see that drastic difference of beautiful Egypt now, and then it's still in many ways like it was thousands of years ago.
Yeah, I've traveled and I've been to the UK, France, Mediterranean, and all kinds of places, but Egypt really is the one that it's like, as you're walking to these temples, or you're walking through the sand, or driving through, like you're saying, I literally could feel myself going, this has not changed. It's literally been untouched, unkept, and I'm literally walking where Pharaoh walked, where peasants walked, priests walked, and it's like, you can't help but feel like a connectedness to the land of, oh my God, I am literally walking in history, and now, say 40, 50 years from now, someone's going to be walking here and going, wow, I'm walking where. And when we take our photographs, where you see the temples off in the distance or this or that, it's like kind of humbling to know I don't really have to write where this is, because 30, 40 years from now, people are going to be able to stand where I was standing going, this is where he took the photo.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the ancient land of Kemet, and that, that's the ancient term for Egypt. And what it actually translates to is the land of the black soil. So Egypt, during times of the year was very rich, in its soil. But then, of course, we all know there are times of drought, and the Nile wouldn't rise the way it normally would. So they've lived and died along that tributary of the Nile, and it still goes on.
And it's incredible to think too that I remember William telling us, like one was the temple of Philae, Isis's temple.
Oh, Isis.
He routed
Philae,
the Nile River to build that temple. And it's like they had the knowledge to move the river back then. It's like today we look and we're like, God, this is such a major feat. And I'm like, these people were like, no modern equipment, and they're moving an entire huge river.
Wow.
And what's interesting about that, Michael, is the Temple of Philae was moved again in modern times because they built the Aswan Dam. So piece by piece, the temple, they reconstructed that temple and moved it to another island. So think about that. So you had the ancients doing, rerouting a river to have the Temple of Philae. And now because of the waters rising, because of the dam we're building, they had to move it again. And that to put it back so seamless, and that was a power-packed place for me. I don't know about you, but it was like I could feel the ancients lining up to welcome us there. It was just stunning. And we saw the dawn come up.
Yeah, I know. We had to get up super early, and it's like all of us were like, why on vacation
stumbling
are
around
we
like, oh my
up
God.
at this hour? And then we saw the sunrise, and it was like, oh my God.
I have pictures of us sitting on those stones with that sun coming up. Yeah, just gorgeous. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe what I should share is, because it just, we no sooner landed, our first foray out was as a group to the Giza Plateau. And we were talking earlier, that day we were going to the Sphinx. but yet you obviously can't miss to see the pyramids in the background. I mean, it's stunning to stand there. And the scope and the scale of the Sphinx, off the charts. And, you know, so we're all together there, you know, as a group, and we're all kind of doing our own thing, moseying around, checking the whole place out. And you've got, you know, in between the paws of the Sphinx, you've got the dream steel stone. And then there's I don't know if you noticed and remember this, Michael, there was a small like altar stone, again, centered right between the paws of the Sphinx. And I can remember being extremely drawn to that stone. And what really got my attention were there were 4 holes burrowed into each corner of this altar stone. Now I'm calling it an altar stone. I don't know. I just feel it was an altar stone. So that's interesting in of itself. And so I go up to it and I'm standing there and I can remember I put my hands on it and I thought, oh, it was like an electrical current went through me. And then I can remember I looked around and there was nobody around me. And I thought, okay, that's weird. And then, but see, this is how it works for me, is I usually have these extraordinary experiences of either a time slip or jumping into a timeline or jumping into a past life. And I'm alone. So I'm made to be alone. So I've started to get a little smarter about this. I can see it start to play up when I've been to certain places and I find myself alone and I kind of go, okay, get ready. But that particular day was when I, and again, I spoke briefly to you about it, is that I don't know if I can call it a time slip. I feel it was, for whatever reason, I jumped back into a lifetime I had there. And all of a sudden, I'm in front of this stone. Then all of a sudden, I'm part of a procession. I'm in what I know to be a female body. I can look out my eyes in this body, who I am. And I look down, I'm dressed in all white. I'm in a long, long type of dress. And I'm carrying an infant child. And it's a male. I just intuitively knew it's a male child. It's swaddled in the most beautiful golden cloth. And then I can remember my procession. I'm in front leading this procession. There's a group of people behind me. Most of them are female priestesses, is how I recognize them. And we're approaching this altar stone. And what this altar stone had 4 posts coming up from the 4 corners. And draped above the 4 posts in a tent-like effect was golden cloth. It was stunning. And then behind the altar stone was a whole group of priests, men, who were dressed all in white. And there's one head priest who stood right behind the procession. And as I approached, I can remember thinking and noting, I wished I noted more, that the Sphinx was painted. It was painted this tawny colored. And I can remember thinking, okay. And then I noted that the dream steel stone was not there. So that to me tells me that whatever was happening that I just jumped into happened a very long time ago. And so I approached with this child that I intuitively know is not mine, but I'm carrying this child. And I hand over this child to the head priest behind the, and this child is now, I'm passing him over this altar stone, giving him to this priest who places the child on the altar stone. And I intuitively knew that this child was going to be sacrificed. And I also knew it was going to be sacrificed for the betterment of Egypt, to honor the gods, to be able for him to be sacrificed for the Nile to flood, for the the waters to enrich the soil, so that they will have a good planting season, so the people will not starve. That this child was being sacrificed to save many. And I just intuitively knew all this. And so I no sooner hand over this child, and this all happens in like seconds, it feels like. I'm all of a sudden I'm back into my body. I'm back into my time. And I looked around and still nobody was around me. And I thought, what the hell just happened?
Wow.
And I walked away with that going, oh my God, what happened? And I can remember I had like tears in my eyes going, okay, this child that wasn't my child was being sacrificed. That still haunts me to this day. That whole thing haunts me. But you know, what a kickoff, right? to then go travel through Egypt, you know, and good God, it seemed like that was like a door opener. It was going to be one of those kinds of trips. That was a soul retrieval, truly reliving some lifetimes.
Wow. We've got a question of Matt Atkinson again. He says, are time slips experienced through a state of mind, or do you enter them through some kind of portal?
Oh, good question. Matt, I almost think it can be both. Just some friends in the fields who have kind of studied this phenomena. I think it can be both. I know I had another incredible time slip happen at Herculaneum, which was another resort area not too far away from Pompeii. And it was, I have a hard time talking about this one. This is a long story short. I basically was placed in the center of Herculaneum, where the lava was coming down, the smoke, all of that was coming down from Vesuvius, and the seas rose up. And where ice was made to stand in Herculaneum, the two gushes of what happened that day came together. And it was, I prayed to God I never experienced that again. But so I feel that was a time slip. I feel as though I was made to see that. For whatever reason, they wanted me to see that. So it's strange, the things they choose to, again, you know, I don't know. Is it a time slip? I'm not sure. It kind of felt that way, that particular event. So Matt, I don't know. I do think it's both, though. I think it can go both ways.
So here's a question for you then. Do you think that the feeling of deja vu when visiting a certain places could explain previous past lives that you've had at that particular location?
I think so. Sure. Deja vu. Yes. You know, I think part of what it is for me, guys, is that and again, this goes back to a past life. I am very susceptible to the solar earth energies. I'm very susceptible to ley lines. I'm very susceptible to electromagnetic anomalies. So, and if you put all that together, that's where most of your sacred sites are all over the world.
Yeah.
Hence Egypt. Hence, and I've been all over the world. And that's the common denominator from most of these sites. And that tends to be, for me, the common denominator of me having these extremely crazy experiences. I think on a soul level, I remember working with those energies. I know I have in the past. And that coming into this incarnation, I carry that susceptibility of realizing and recognizing and working with these energies as a healer. And I've studied a few different healing modalities, you know, all guided. And one of the, you know, one of the things I brought with me, Michael, I don't know if you remember this, is I was guided, not in Egypt, but in Guatemala. I was taking a very specialized Avesa Quantum Healing training class in Guatemala. And that's where I got my Egyptian healing rods, my wands of Horus. I have them right here. And so that's why I was guided to bring these with me to Egypt to be energized in the Great Pyramid. Michael, do you remember when we got off the bus and we were told we couldn't bring anything into the Great Pyramid? And you said, give me your rods. I'll put them in my pockets. You had like a big sweatshirt on. I'm like, oh my God, I have to bring the rods in. And you tried to smuggle them in. We got caught.
Actually, I think we got them through.
Well, you know how we got him through? Emil, our guide, he knew what I was trying to do because I'm all upset because they took him from you. And I said to Emil, I got to get my Egyptian healer. They got to come into the Great Pyramid with me. And he, I don't know if you were there, he argued in Egyptian with these two guys. Like, I thought they were going to come to fisticuffs. I mean, I thought, oh boy. And he argued for me to get my healing rods back, but they wouldn't give them to me. They gave them to him so that he put one in one pocket, one in the other pocket. And that's how they went into the Great Pyramid. So, yeah, I mean, that whole trip was just so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were supercharged in the Great Pyramid. They were so powerful, I've learned after the fact, that I was not meant to carry them into the Great Pyramid. Had I carried them in, I would have gotten very harmed, I've been told, because of the high energy of them being energized in there, that I could not actually hold them for about 6 months after I got back from Egypt. And the first time I took them out to do a healing on a dear friend who was having some issues with kidney stones, she's sitting in my couch back here. And I have a big square coffee table in front of that couch. And she's sitting there and I'm zoning in and I'm, using the rods. And the minute I picked up the rods and held them and stood in front of her, I was thrown backwards. If that coffee table wasn't there, I would have landed flat on my butt and I fell into the coffee table. And she's like, oh my God, what just happened? And I said, I have no idea. But I mean, that's how powerful they are now. So I'm very selective when I use them because they're supercharged would be a good word. Yep. Yeah. And that again, that's another thing is I have been told, I've had numerous people after going to Egypt see different lifetimes from me there. There's a common thread in all of my lifetimes, and it's being a healer, and it's using these earth energies. It's using things like these healing rods. It's crazy, but it's all, again, it's related to the soul retrieval piece of what was what I do.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was reading like you do Reiki too. Remember after every adventure we went on after dinner, we'd all be at the table and it was like, okay, time to go around the circle. And
yep.
I was like, my hands, I was like, I could just feel like everything from the Nile to where we were. It was like, I was like, I never felt anything like it, but I was like, man, I was just like, I found myself like going, okay, I'm feeling tired, but we got tonight. And it's like I would all of a sudden get like another wind.
It was a trip of many lifetimes for sure. It was most magical. It truly was on so many levels. But again, it's like, who goes out and gets Egyptian healing rods? Seriously. But yet I'm guided to go to Guatemala, which is, that it was a tough country at the time. There was a lot of upheaval. And my family thought I was absolutely crazy. My parents were begging me, don't go. And I'm like, I'm going to Guatemala. Middle of the night, book the flight, jump into the class, take the last, class, one more person in the class was allowed. I took the second to last seat on a plane. I mean, it's stuff like that. It's just, I've learned to kind of go with the flow with all of this. And so here, I'll share an interesting story that will explain a lot of things I think I'm going through. Is years ago, before I got on this path, before I went to Egypt, I was taking Reiki. I was just drawn to that type of healing, using the energies of that. So I take Reiki. And I was taking it with a master Reiki woman who was lovely. Her name was Nancy. And, she was a medium, she was a psychic. So she had the whole package. So she did a reading for me. And she said to me, and again, my guides come through. So again, she wasn't used to that energy. So she's like, okay. All of your guides are here. And They're telling me and they're showing me you are standing at the edge of a cliff. You've got your toes curled over the edge of a cliff, and they're asking you, are you ready to jump in? Now, I knew exactly what they were talking about, and I didn't hesitate, and I said, I'm jumping in. And ever since then, I have been on a fast track that you read about. I mean, so much exploded for me, guided to do all these things. Go to Guatemala, go to Egypt. I meet these key people like William and Claire. I then go forward and travel with them to other places, sacred sites around the world. And it's crazy. It opened up this entire whole life for me. And it's because I took the risk. I knew if I was to take that leap of faith, I would be protected. There'll be a net under there somewhere. And there always has been. I've had a few instances where it was a little scary, to be quite honest. But for the most part, they've got my back. So it's all good. It's all meant to be. I think the question becomes, where am I going? Like, what's the end purpose of all this? Right. I'm a writer now. I have been working on a book of compiling all of my experiences. Some of them are beyond, like what I put in Phenomena magazine, was 6,000 words of my travels through Egypt. And I didn't even touch on all of the locations that we went. I was mindful of keeping my word count down. But yeah, I'm on this path, loving it. It's awesome. I get to meet people like yourselves and talk about it. So I guess that's my purpose here, I guess, is to just talk about it, write about it, and share.
That's excellent. Do you believe that people are actually born with these special abilities, or do they just develop them over time?
You're born with them. I do. And then I think there is that piece of past lives can come into it. Yeah. I mean, what I'm doing, what I'm guided to do is definitely all past life related. But I do believe that there are people who we all have the abilities. It's whether you want to tap into them and learn more about it and accept, like for instance, I think we're all, everybody says, we all can communicate to spirit. It's just a matter of allowing it to happen. And I do believe there are people out there who are good teachers who can enable us to learn techniques to connect more so to spirit. I know, Michael, you go on all your investigations, you've encountered God knows what, I'm sure, in all of them. And I think innately, I think all of us come in with the ability. It's just some of us choose to have it come through and own it, and or some of us want to learn more and take classes and hopefully are guided to a good teacher. But yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I've had a past life experience myself, and my best friend, I got told off a medium that I basically killed myself when I was pregnant in the past life. By jumping off a bridge, and apparently my best friend was that child that I sort of murdered. So my best friend won't let us live it down that apparently I killed her in the past life.
Oh my goodness! Wow! But that you both have come together in this lifetime. That is so interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
At least I'll ever live in this lifetime. That's what she keeps saying.
Well, so what that tells me though is that you were given another chance with that soul. That you kind of got it right in this lifetime, that she's there for you, that you now know who she was in that past lifetime, to try and make a bit of an amends to what happened.
Yeah.
Wow. That's cool.
There's a whole big story about it. I had it published in a magazine years and years ago, about 20 years ago. So it's I've learned a lot about it. It's been a long journey with that one, but I don't really talk about it as much than what I do with the paranormal. So with you talking about obviously the past lives and stuff like that, I thought I'll bring it up to you, see what you think.
Yeah, that is amazing. Well, yeah, I truly, because a little bit of that has happened for me, is that, I do believe that, sometimes we're, we travel in soul groups. So sometimes, you know, that child, she's part of your soul group. So she agreed to come into this lifetime with you to kind of go, hey, okay, we're cool. It happened. But guess what? I'm here with you now. And we're friends.
Yeah, like I say, she won't let us live that down. She keeps calling us a murderer and stuff like that.
I love it. Hey, you know, if I've learned nothing else, honest to God, and all that's happened with me, is that you got to have a sense of humor.
Oh, yes.
Or swear to God, you'd be dead. I mean, you truly just have to have a sense of humor, you know, and not take it all so seriously.
Yeah.
Because some of it can get heavy. That's for sure. Wow. I'd love to read that one of these days. I don't know if you still have the article that you can send off, because that stuff just intrigues me to no end.
I think my mum's got a copy. She says that she's got a copy of it, but I haven't got a clue where my copy of it is. I'm sure I can track it down anyway. So
yeah,
I'll send it to you.
Wow, thank you. I would love that.
Another thing that was in your bio about hearing the music of the spheres. Could you explain what it sounded like?
Oh, it's funny. I've heard the music of the spheres. That is a theory by Pythagoras, who initially wrote about and would teach and talk about the music of the spheres. And in his theory, that was the music that the planets, upon a certain alignment, would make, that you could hear this in the universe. I believe it. And Michael, I mentioned to you that after the experience I had in the Queen's Chamber, which I probably should talk about, but not at this moment. That's what I heard up above. The rest of our group had gone back up into the King's Chamber, and they were toning. And the music of the spheres, I did not know what that was at the time, Cal. I had no idea. But yet I stood there in the Queen's Chamber, and what I heard was so otherworldly that the words came to me, music of the spheres. And then, like a lot of times what happens to us is that you'll hear something like that. Okay, music of the spheres. Never heard about that before. All of a sudden, everything that's on your path is music of the spheres. Pythagoras, you know, you go down the rabbit hole and you learn about it. I'm going, oh my God. So that was what I believe I heard my fellow travelers toning. It started off in human voice. What it became was absolutely not human voices. I believe at some point that I think the music of the spheres came through. And William Henry recorded it. You know, I don't feel I can share it. I believe at some point, Michael, somebody put it out on, I don't know if it was William or Claire, I'm not sure who put it out on, you know, into the internet. I don't know if it was YouTube. I'm not sure. It was a while ago. But I recently sat down as I was writing about my experiences in Egypt, A Soul's Journey. I replayed that recording, and I almost fell off my chair. I was like, what the hell? So, whoa, totally forgot how crazy the sounds of that was. And Cal, I believe it was the music of the spheres. I really do. And then I heard, again, this music of the spheres, for whatever reason, is now a part of me. And I actually was being guided. You know, I get these little pulls and yearnings, and my guides kick in, and I was guided to go to Scotland in 2019. And in 2019, there was an extraordinary alignment of, throughout Europe, there were 7 cathedrals, sacred cathedrals in Europe, that on a particular day, July 28th, 2019, each sacred cathedral across Europe was going to be connected to a planet. And through that planetary connection was also a connection to the chakra. So it was an earth and a celestial connection. So Rosslyn Chapel which I was guided to go to Scotland, was part of the itinerary, was to go to Rosslyn Chapel. I was blown over by learning this alignment because the seventh chakra, the crown chakra, was the alignment for Rosslyn Chapel, and the exact date of all those 7 alignments to all those 7 cathedrals and planets was happening on July 28th, 2019, while I was going to be in Scotland. So my group went to Rosslyn Chapel that evening before the 28th, but it was such still a powerful alignment that, my God. So, I had no idea what I was going to be walking into, literally, but I knew intuitively that there was a reason why I was made to be there, that time frame of those alignments. And again, the music of the spheres, because each planet had its alignment. And if you know any of the history of Rosslyn Chapel, there is now been discovered the somatics that are all over the ceiling of Rosslyn Chapel, and that they're all connected to music. And there's been a father and son team, and forgive me, I don't have their names in front of me, who actually made a CD of this music, and it's stunningly beautiful. Yeah. And my teacher, Xenos, who I mentioned in my notes to you folks, he was the one who said to me, you are being guided to be there. That there is, for whatever reason, I needed to be there for that particular alignment. So trusting him, so here's the freaky thing. So Tim Wallace Murphy, I'm sure many of you have heard of him. I'm sure, Kell, you probably know him. And he wrote an incredible book about Rosslyn Chapel. So again, I'm guided to get this book. And I'm devouring it. That book was written, oh God, I want to say 1987, maybe. So I'm reading through it. The end of one chapter, he starts talking about, he's got the date, July 28th, 2019, of this alignment happening and Rosslyn Chapel being part of it. So all those years before, he saw this event and he wrote about it. And I was like, oh my God. So I no sooner stumbled on that part of the book, and that blew my mind. And then I, as soon as I had a bing on my phone, and it was the gal who organized the trip, Patricia Awan. She lives in Egypt. We're great friends. And she was putting together the Scotland trip, believe it or not, and connecting with a woman guide in Scotland. And she texted me a question about the trip. So I'm texting back to her. When on my phone, I get this note that, again, a ping that came up with a notice from Facebook that Tim Wallace Murphy had just died. Now, mind you, I'm not friends with Tim Wallace Murphy on Facebook. So how I even got that notice is beyond me. And I stopped texting back to Patricia. I messaged her. I said, you're not going to believe this. And she was like, what? So there was this whole connection thing going on. So off to Rosslyn I go. We had an incredible journey through Scotland, but I knew obviously there was something going on here that, I had to be in Rosslyn Chapel. So I go up to Rosslyn Chapel. I don't know if any of you have been there. It's a stunning place. Oh my God, there's so much to unpack there. And I walk up and I'm guided. They're saying to me, go around counterclockwise. So I do. And I go in a side door. So if you're looking at Rosslyn, I go around clockwise and I go in this side door, and it brings you into an aisle that lines up with the altar that's right in the middle of the chapel. And then there are seats, on either side of this aisle. So I'm guided. So we had a private tour at that point. So we waited to the public time. So it was after 6. We had the whole place to ourselves. And so my travel gang, they're all kind of in the pews. Everybody's kind of just, tapping into the whole essence of Rosslyn Chapel. So I walk up, and it was like something took over my body. Can't tell you. I walk up, I'm made to stand on a certain stone. And I can remember I had the vague thought that, okay, I have two friends who are right next to me. And I can remember thinking, that's interesting. And then all of a sudden, my breathing starts to literally go off the charts. And what happens for me is I can adjust my vibration through breath work. And I learned to do that in Guatemala. So all of a sudden, without me consciously doing it, I start to get into this phase of this breathing that's rapidly accelerating my vibration. And as soon as that starts to kick in, I have an outer body experience. And I can remember I could see the stained glass ahead of me behind the altar. And I can remember I held on to that little snippet that I could see of the stained glass, almost like to anchor me where I was standing. And then I realized that, okay, I'm gone. Something's going on here. And what happened was, and honest to God, guys, I've never really talked about this before. I had a friend Derek, who filmed what happened. And it's so eerie for me I've only watched it once because it really bothers me to see. You can see that something happened. My eyes go back in my head. I'm clearly not there. And my other friend, Jane, who was there, could see, she's very powerful lady. She came up to me because she knew something was going on there with me. And she put her hand on my back and she said she could feel me leave my body and she felt something else come in. So I then, what I was shown was I go up somewhere. I honest to God don't know where I was, but what I'm shown are the workmen of Rosslyn Chapel, all those thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago, 1300s, I believe it was first built. It was built on, they showed me, it was built on, now I knew none of this history of Rosslyn, mind you. It was built on a very ancient site prior to Rosslyn Chapel. It was an even older site that was on a pilgrimage pathway of initiates. And that was one of the places they stopped. And it was almost as though, I don't want to say Stonehenge, but there were stones there. It was a place of just being very ceremonial in very ancient time. And so like a lot of places, you will have repeated building on these sacred sites. So again, it's the ley lines. There's water underneath of Rosslyn. There's geomagnetic anomalies. So it all locked in that here I am having this experience and they're showing me this. They're showing me Rosslyn being built on this sacred site. And that they then showed me that there were two men who were part of the traveling stonemasons. And they had their own guild and everything back in the day. And again, mind you, I had no idea what any of this was at the time. And they showed me how they encoded these two men who were, let's just say, otherworldly might be the best way to say it. They were instrumental in encoding the somatics of the music of the spheres into the ceiling, into the actual bones of Rosslyn. And that they were using these special tools too. See, none of this is familiar to me, so I'm not even quite sure what I saw. One of the tools had what looked like a white encased piece to it. And for whatever reason, that was the toning instrument, if that makes any sense. So it was remarkable what I was shown. And then what started to happen was I started they were downloading information to me. So I started writing. This is what the witnesses tell me. I start writing as though I'm noting all of this that's happened. And then all of a sudden the energy shifted and I start to stumble, and Jane got up and caught me. Derek got up, helped me, because I started to collapse. I'm not sure what was happening at that point. They get me to sit down, and I continued to take what I only can call take notes. It's as though I'm doing automatic writing. It's as though I'm recording these. Now I have a sense about this, the music of the spheres. That's what I'm writing down. And they all witnessed it. It was filmed. So Roslyn to me, my God, is a place of the most magical wonders. And then to actually be guided to be there for that date, for that alignment, to me is beyond. And here's somebody, I had no idea a few years ago what the music of the spheres were. And now look at, it was off the charts. So here's the cool thing. When I got home, I had an appointment with this woman who does a lot of body work, healing work. And usually after I would travel, I would go to her, because what she would do is a lot of times, I don't know if this ever happened to you, Michael, you're in some of these heavy sites, you can get attachments. You can have some kind of negative things kind of attached to you.
Right.
And that was the case. And so she said they were kind of low level things. Nothing to worry about, but she got them away. But what happened was, as she puts her hands on my shoulders and tapped into my energy, as she claimed, they allowed her, because I had told her how I came from Scotland. I had told her just a little snippet of what happened in Roslyn. No big, not all the detail I just shared. My guides, tapped with her guides and allowed her to see what I saw. She is in a stool that's on wheels. She's behind me. She wheels away. She goes, "Oh my God." And I'm like, "Are you okay?" What? She goes, "They just showed me what you saw at Roslyn." And she described everything I saw. And I said, "So it's real?" And she goes, "They showed it to me and I just saw it." And she's like, I won't even use the expletive that she used. She goes, "Oh my, I can't believe that that's what happened." And I was like, "Well, I'm glad you saw it, because I didn't believe it either." I'm thinking to myself, how do you unpack that? But yeah, so that was a nice way for me, because I know we all kind of doubt ourselves when we have these incredible experiences. You're like, all right. Did that really happen? Or did you make it up? Or is it a dream? She saw it. And so I was bowled over by that. That was like the frosting on the cake. I was like, okay, cool. I'm not a crazy lady. Somebody else saw it happen too. But then I have since met people who are very familiar with the histories of Roslyn Chapel. And they were like, spot on. Everything you saw, that could have been exactly how it went down. So there's that.
That's amazing.
Wow.
I've just realised the time. Obviously, listening to you has been absolutely fascinating, and we've gone well over.
Oh my goodness!
Like I say, I'm just sitting here fascinated. That's why I'm hardly talking. But we'd love to have you back on and hear some more of this. So if that's okay with you at some point, we'll get you back on.
Wonderful. I know, because I never got to my big experience in the Queen's Chamber. Alien encounter.
Michael, do you think we've got another 5 or 10 minutes so we can hear this other encounter?
Well, I don't know if she can cover it in 5 or 10 minutes.
That's true.
Oh, the initial experience I probably could. Yeah, some more detail around it, can kind of come in afterwards. But it's up to you guys. I understand time restraints.
I'm fine. Like I say, I'm fine to listen to it if Michael is.
Well,
it's up to you guys.
Actually, I would kind of like to switch gears for a second about England and Avesbury, Glastonbury tour.
Oh boy. All right, just for time's sake. Amesbury, off the charts. Another one of those experiences where call it a time slip, jumping into another lifetime. I won't go into all the detail. That was an incredibly beautiful experience, because what that did is I went back to a lifetime where I was a priestess and a healer. And that's what those Avebury stones were used for. They were healing stones. So they would have processions that came down through the alleyway of the stones, and it was all used for healing. Beautiful to see and to know that's what that was used for. So then the tour, my God, I'm climbing the tour. And again, I went with William and Claire and an awesome group of people. So I don't know if any of you have climbed the tour. It's a climb, and you're going up this hill, and there's just this, like, at the side we were climbing, there was just this little, dirt path going all the way up. So, I had part of my group up ahead of me. Part of my group was well down below. I'm kind of in the middle. All of a sudden, again, I'm by myself. And I didn't really register it at first. And so I remember looking up and seeing this one man coming down from the top of the tour, coming down on my little path. And I can remember thinking, okay, this is going to be weird, because you can't fit two people on this path. So one of us is going to have to step off the path. So as he comes down, now mind you, I'm the dummy that's worried about, I'm going to have to step off the path for this guy. He comes to me, and we're facing each other. Very nondescript man, just kind of balding, probably looked like he was in maybe his 40s, kind of a slight build. But he had these eyes. And I can remember I looked up as he's coming, and I'm thinking, all right, how's this going to work? And then he looks at me, and he has this like giggle, this funny, weird giggle. And he goes, and he's now right up to me. And he goes, I see you. And I went, oh my God, I step off the path. He keeps going. And I'm going, oh my God, what the hell just happened? I turn around. No man. Wow. No man. Nobody's around me. Rest of my group way down below. Everybody else way up above. No man. Now, if he just walked by me, I'd see him.
Right.
And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget the look in his eyes, and that like weird giggle. And then to say that to me, I see you.
Wow.
Like, wow. How do you interpret that? Like, jeez. And on the tour, no less.
Yeah, because it was funny when you said that. It was like my first thought was, he's a spirit. And then
yeah, I think so.
You go, yeah, he walked by, and you looked and then saw he disappeared. I was like, wow, I was actually right. I was like expecting you're going to be like, and he was looking back. And
Yeah. I really do think, again, he was somebody from a past life. I have been told by, again, my teacher, who I'll briefly mention, Xenos. He came on my path in 2015, so a year after Egypt. He, in this incarnation, lived in Australia. I met him through a mutual friend, and he asked me to be a student of his, and I was blown away, because this man is so powerful. He very high level soul. He could incarnate at will. He's had some incredible past lives. I won't go into that. And here he's asking me if I'd be a student, and I thought, oh my God, okay, yeah, because this mutual friend, she was also a student of his, and she was far more advanced than me. So I'm thinking, this is pretty cool stuff. So he was on my path for 3 years. So I have 5 letters from him that are filled with the most stunning ancient information. He unfolds everything for me. And he's the one who, unless he would tell me about a past life, only if I had an experience where I maybe relived it, or if I'm remembering it, he would not say anything else. And so he was always very engaged when I would do my sacred travel, because he, of course, knew that some of what was going to happen to me was related to a past life. And then I'd come home and I'd write about all my experiences and email it to him. And then he would break it down. And it's absolutely remarkable. So there's a book there because the information, I just know now that I meant to share a lot of these teachings that I've been blessed to have through him. He was a Druid. He was a high priest. And I was as his student, I was at the Bardic level of my Druidic training. And what's interesting about Druidism is that it's not a religion. It's a philosophy. It's a teaching, ancient teachings. And so, and he died in 2018. Yeah, so I've lost him. Mm-hmm. But I've been told we meet on the astral plane. There are times where I feel him near me, like it's off the chart stuff. And he's there. So he's still helping me unpack this crazy, crazy ride that I'm on. So, yeah.
Well, our condolences to you for your loss of your teacher.
Yeah, that was a tough one, but he's there, and that's cool. That I'm still having communication from him, so it's all good.
Yeah,
all good.
Well, Kell, I think you're being told it's time.
Can you hear that? Yeah, I think she's getting a bit sick of being stuck in the other room now, so she's barking to let us know that she wants.
Oh, who's that, Kell?
That's my dog. Venus is her name, but we'll call her Woo. She's
I love it.
a Neapolitan Mastiff, and she likes to be the star of the show usually, so I have to lock her in the other room.
Oh, I love it. Mine is somewhere asleep. Her name is Kali. I named her after the Egyptian goddess Kali.
Yeah, I've got a cat called Kali.
Somewhere.
I've got a cat called Kali.
Oh, no kidding.
Spelled the same way she was.
I love it because my dog, she's a Cavalier. She's black and tan. So I knew she was going to have a special name. And in Sanskrit, Kali means the black one. Is your cat black?
She's grey.
Oh.
Yeah.
Close enough.
There you go. There you go.
I always name all my animals after like goddesses and gods and stuff like that. So
same. Yeah. You got to think about those names.
Yeah. For sure. Especially when I had a hamster called Loki.
Oh, good name.
Yeah.
Little trickster.
Good name.
Yeah, he was. He actually escaped. So he was a trickster.
Oh no. You never got him back?
Me dog ate him.
Well, isn't that karmic?
Was the dog named Thor by chance?
No. That was Bono. That was like before I went through that phase and named the animals after gods. So.
Well, Loki was a god.
Yeah, I know. But that was the first one, I think.
Yeah. Hopefully he's going to incarnate at a better level than
Yeah.
Or away from dogs.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Be bigger than a dog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I think we'll better wrap it up there then, Michael.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, whereabouts if people want to see you or speak to you, can they get in touch with you?
That's probably best done by Facebook. I'm on Facebook under Kathy Tierney Cogliano. I can share an email address as well. I wouldn't mind anybody emailing. And that's a bit of a long one. It's adornedbykathy@gmail.com. So it's ADORNEDBY Kathy KATHY@gmail. But thank you guys so much. This was such a blast to be here with you. And Michael, so good to reconnect with you. I can't tell you.
I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, we definitely need to get you on again to hear the rest of your story as well. So
thank you. Yes, I'll delve into what happened in the pyramid because both of us had our experiences in there for sure. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So definitely, I would love to be back and have you have me back. Thank you, guys. This was wonderful.
Michael, who will go on next week's? 2 weeks show.
Your mate, Craig Morris.
Oh yeah, Craig. My medium friend. Brilliant.
Nice.
So anyway, I'll let you close up then, Michael.
All right.
I'm having a night off.
Thank you for joining us at Paranormal Versus. Hope to see you on our next episode.